No company could do that by themselves, and the problems are so complex you can only solve them by working together collaboratively.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bart Ruijs from the Intelligent Enterprise Institute. Welcome to our Envision Beyond interview series. Today we're joined with Peter Mittemeyer, CEO of Compassana, and we'll be talking about business networks, the challenges they can address and what they might support in the future.
Yeah. Hi Bart, thank you very much for having me. Delighted to have that conversation with you. I'm Peter, I'm CEO of Compassana. Compassana is a joint venture of 3 of the major health insurances in Switzerland and 2 healthcare providers, a private hospital chain and a primary care provider. Basically, our mission is to create a digitally enabled integrated care for the Swiss healthcare.
And let me just open it up with a very open, very general question. How would you define a business network?
Decisive question, business network. I like to think about it as an ecosystem. So I think a business network is basically a subset of an existing ecosystem, in our case the healthcare ecosystem in Switzerland, that comes together to solve a problem or create a satisfaction for a very complicated user demand that none of the players could individually solve themselves.
So it's about bringing different stakeholders and different players in the market together to drive towards a joint objective, so to speak. How do what do you think are general understanding of the role in terms of intercompany collaboration and how that has changed in this business network environment?
It changed quite substantially, I believe. What was usually a vendor-customer relationship where you negotiate contracts to provide a service or a product into the value chain, you come now into a more eye-level relationship because your product or service is needed to provide that overall value proposition. So therefore you need to have a eye-level relationship. You can't only follow the best path to satisfy your own interest and needs, but you have to look at the overall interest. Right? So that has substantially changed from a top-down or a negotiating relationship to more a cooperative relationship.
You see that in other industries as well, that it's sort of like similar to what you see in the healthcare industry?
Yes, building industry, for example, if I think about we're in Switzerland, the Gotthard Tunnel, 57-kilometer long tunnel under the Alps to basically provide a quicker connection, a better experience between Zurich and Milan, for example. No company could do that by themselves, and the problems are so complex you can only solve them by working together collaboratively. Not basically one company is the primary contractor and they buy in services and products from other companies and they basically try to get every single franc out of them in terms to optimize the margin. They need to make sure they can deliver the quality required at a healthy price, at a healthy margin, right, to coexist over that long time.
Right. So how do you think the pandemic has changed the level of understanding of these interconnections between these different businesses? Have you seen an impact there?
I can only speak for healthcare in Switzerland and a few other countries who I know developments. I saw a more quick uptake of digital services in healthcare. If that should be a video consultation or digital online appointment bookings, these kind of basic services. I think the only reason why we exist is that it become clear that there are certain challenges in the healthcare system that cannot be solved or addressed by just one player within that, or even one sector within that industry. So this collaboration of the investors and ecosystem partners, as we call them, has the purpose to solve a problem. Sometimes it's an industry problem like data flow, but also create more innovative integrated care.
Would you think that that the players in the ecosystem now better understand the value they get from such an ecosystem. And based on the pandemic, the fact that we understand things better, that we see clearer, that they are better to either articulate the value they derive themselves or as a bigger system. Do you think that that's sort of like an evolution that we could maybe conclude to as well then?
So coming back to the pandemic, yes, and that highlighted the problem of data flow within the healthcare system. So that has brought forward the fact that everybody has to chip in and do their part, their bit to solve that problem of data flow and availability of healthcare data and the security of healthcare data.
Yeah.
It's very important. And it also showed when should these data be available to everybody, every player in the system, then they could start being creative. How can we now, based on a better set of data, improve the healthcare we give?
Right. If we look at the business network and what you're working on, and we can then see if we can also expand that to other, let's call it industries, what are some of the main challenges that you face in building such a network?
Yeah. So the main challenge is to be very clear about the value proposition. And there are 3 layers of value proposition. Of course, you need to provide as we as a company to the investors in the ecosystem partners, should that be a doctor, a chain of doctors, a hospital chain, a radiology institute, a rehab center. They all need to know what is their gain by being part of that system. So they have an individual gain. Then we can enable the ecosystem partners to jointly innovate. So how can they come up with new systems to provide care across the sectors, which is not possible at the moment. Yeah, and the 3rd layer is as I already mentioned, data is something that I think about a lot at the moment. How they can address together an industry-wide problem. So a problem they all share, but none of them can solve themselves. So as an ecosystem, they can lay these foundations, these infrastructure, to then work better based on that. So
how does then a player within the ecosystem actually takes that ecosystem as a way to differentiate themselves going forward?
The way I see it for healthcare is that the way you differentiate will change. In some healthcare systems, especially in the Swiss one, you can still differentiate yourself with basic digital services that you can provide that others don't. But in 3, 4, 5 years' time, these system services and products have become a commodity, so everybody does it, so you can't differentiate. So then you think, how can I add those products and services together to create maybe a joint offering with one of the other ecosystem partners to differentiate us to the customer themselves. And they will always have to start innovating.
Right. And I guess data is going to be playing a key role in that whole aspect, because it seems like data is the foundation to actually make all of these connections work as well. Then, if you were to just paint your dream or vision, where do you see business networks evolve to in the future?
The ideal business network would always be one that has really well identified the common problems to solve, the common infrastructure to put in, and then find a smart way to find this fine line of where I need to be very selfish and create my own value.
Right.
And where can I create a wholly different value that nobody else can, because I'm so good at collaborating with other ecosystem partners. And that's very hard, because you need to always make that trade-off between I put something in and get more out of it, to what happens if I put my service, make my service available, my product available, and I lose my competitive edge?
In terms of partners, Peter, we've talked about partners already, and partners are really very important in actually building out an ecosystem. They not only provide value into the ecosystem, and value can be a variety of different things. It can be knowledge, it can be money, it can be anything basically. How easy or difficult is it to attract additional partners into an existing network, or even start up a network? Tell us a bit more about how you've seen that happening with the initiative that you're working on.
So it all starts with sort of a group of founding partners. A group of people, in our case, was a group of companies, three of which are real heavy competitors in the same market, realize that there's some concerted action needed to solve some of these problems and to create new gains, to create new offerings. So we call them the orchestrators, and they orchestrate the network or the ecosystem in our case. So they basically say, this is the architecture of the network, these are the rules of collaboration, and this is the technical and the process standard, if you will, that we want to work on. So they make the rules. And then we take this, pack it into a value proposition, and we basically approach the standing ecosystem partners and say, this is an ecosystem we're building. This could be a value created to you. These are new services you can obtain, and they will create efficiency or efficacy gains. So you have to convince one by one, but you always have to paint the picture. Once you've joined it, what else can you do? Because within your ecosystem are partners who are basically further down the value chain, and how, when you collaborate with them, how can you improve your own offering, and also how can you improve the whole patient journey?
Right.
So that's what we do, and we also offer access to data they don't have at the moment, and therefore you have to put something in to get something out.
Right.
So this is that's the pitch we have.
Okay.
Plus, as a whole, you are able to contribute to the society, because the goal of all this sector is to keep society healthy and to manage healthcare costs and to provide the best possible medical outcome for that cost.
Okay. So, I'm interested to learn a bit more about Compassana now, Peter. Now that we have you here, would love to hear a bit more, because it sounds like a very interesting story.
And actually is. So Compassana is first an ecosystem, funnily enough, that's why I'm here. Ecosystem of participants in the Swiss healthcare industry that decided to increase the possibility of, in Switzerland, having a digitally enabled integrated healthcare. So what does that mean? Integrated healthcare means you have an integration of the patient journey across all sectors: primary care, secondary care, so clinical stationary care, rehabilitation in the third sector, home care. And in Switzerland, we have a fragmented and very liberal healthcare market, and is not connected on a digital level yet. So this is what we want to do. We want to create a digitally enabled integrated healthcare. That means to provide care across all sectors, across all disciplines, and create a data set that is available to and owned by the patient, who then can orchestrate his own journey through the system, and enable all the healthcare providers to have access to the data, if the patient allows them to have, to then make better medical decisions. So once we have this ecosystem, we are building a platform to enable that on a digital level, to connect all the players and provide the data. And once we have that, the players can innovate on healthcare plans, healthcare solutions, new healthcare solutions for diabetes 2 care, new healthcare solutions for a breast cancer journey, new healthcare solutions for a MS journey. So these are the possibilities where you can now innovate that you couldn't do before because you didn't have the data.
Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us today and sharing your valuable insights on Business Network.
It was my pleasure.
Well, thank you for listening to our conversation with Peter Mittemeyer on Business Networks. We hope to meet with you again in the other episodes of our Envision Beyond interview series.